The COVID-19 outbreak is a reminder that pandemics have always existed and will continue to happen in the future. Even if we can't predict when they will occur, we should prepare to dampen their effects in the global economy. This pandemic has forced many businesses to close, and this has led a decrease in consumption and production, creating the worst recession since 1930s. There are an endless number of questions we could ask ourselves in connection to globalization and international business. For instance, how this pandemic will impact globalization and international business in the long term. This current outbreak has had severe economic and social consequences, globally speaking, which has led to dramatic changes in how markets move. People have also changed their behavior as consumers, increasing the demand of takeout, for example, online shopping, access to online education, and even more. Here is an important fact that before the pandemic we had not realized that we were such a globalized world and at the same time so close and dependent on supply chains. This current outbreak has had severe economic and social consequences, globally speaking, which has led to dramatic changes in how markets move. People have also changed their behavior as consumers, for example, increasing the demand of takeout, online shopping, access to online education, and even more. Here is an important fact that before the pandemic, we had not realized that we were such a globalized world, and at the same time so close and dependent on supply chains. The current situation adds pressure on supply chains that have been struggling since the US-China trade conflict. And this kind of pressure that is added will turn out to disperse supply chains, and also we will see a greater dispersion in decision making in order to satisfy local demands. In case of many companies that depend on intermediate components from other countries, cannot change their supply chains, and in order to change them, years will pass. In this scenario, small and medium-sized companies will have harder time surviving the shock caused by the coronavirus. But if they are able to adapt themselves, they will survive and be completely profitable in the next decade. One of the many edges of this situation is that a greater dispersion of the supply chains could allow countries to develop the capacities to become more viable in international business in the long term speaking, which means that countries might be more resilient in terms of the action of networks based on value chains that are shorter, sustainable, and digital. This last word is very important because we are going to move to digital. Many companies haven't been able to go digital, and if these companies can't adapt quickly to this digitalized world, they won't be able to endure in time. In the next decade, successful companies will establish a huge manufacturing network in multiple locations to reduce independence from other countries. Another important fact is that companies need to understand how their stakeholders operate and interact to optimize communication, and also understand the financial needs and the important role that they play in the community, workers, stakeholders, governments, and their relationship with the environment. On the other hand, there are sectors that will be heavily impacted in terms of globalization, mostly including tourism and airlines because they involve the movement of people and they need the interaction with their customers. This means that globalization may be negatively impacted with the form of trade of goods and how international businesses are built. So it's unclear how the pandemic will impact them in the long term. But what I can say for sure is that once we get through this pandemic, we will emerge as a new, different, and transformed world. With this situation, businesses are forced to innovate and rethink their business models to generate revenues. One of the many lessons that this pandemic leaves us is that technology has changed the way international businesses are performed and has allowed companies to expand their global operations. COVID-19 has accelerated workplace transformations. How we work, how we communicate, how we think, how we do businesses. All organizational functions have one target: to optimize tasks that will not have value in the current environment. On the bright side, the COVID pandemic offers a great opportunity in the long term for companies, because the post-COVID markets are going to be undoubtedly different. We should make an effort to learn from the consequences of this pandemic and prepare our society if this happens again.